What's up, fellow collectors? Welcome back to the M.I.B. Master Toy Museum. I'll be your curator today. Guys, we want to invite you in for a cup of coffee. It's early here at the museum. The doors are just starting to open. But you have your VIP passes today here at the museum to help me figure out or settle a debate that I've been having with a few of my collector buddies. Today's debate is the Street Fighter toy collection from the early 1990s, right around 1993. Capcom was the company that owned the rights to Street Fighter. They created this sensational video game that everybody was addicted to back then. I mean, it was in supermarkets, it was in arcades, all across the country, all across the world, actually. People couldn't get enough of Street Fighter. And I got to talking with some good collector buddies of mine, and one of my friends said, this was one of the worst toy lines that Hasbro produced. And I almost fell out of my chair because I am on the opposite side of that spectrum. This is one of the best toy lines of all time. One of the best 12-inch toy lines. I'll say 12-inch. We'll leave the 8-inch figures out of it. This is one of the best 12-inch toy lines ever produced. It truly seized the moment, albeit a very small moment in toy history. But the Street Fighter toy line really seized the moment. The 12-inch action figures were absolutely fantastic, aesthetically beautiful to look at. They connected so well with the public, in my opinion, for what they were intended to be. Sci-fi, fantasy characters come to life in 12-inch action form. From video game to action figure. Street Fighter really had it all. I challenge anybody to find a better 12-inch action figure line than Street Fighter. Hasbro saw an opportunity to really cash in on Street Fighter's immense success. Now you have to understand, right around this time, G.I. Joe was just getting its feet back underneath it. It'd been out for a couple years. So this is why you see the G.I. Joe logo on some of these figures. They were branded under the G.I. Joe family umbrella. But who didn't love Ryu? Guile. Is it Guile or Gilly? That's what we want to know. I guess tomato, tomato, right? But who didn't love these figures? M. Bison. And the movie, it actually had a movie that came out in 1993. that starred Jean-Claude Van Damme. And this is about as close of a likeness as you'll get from Hasbro to Jean-Claude Van Damme's character, Colonel Gilly, or Guile, Special Forces Commander. These figures are fantastic. Blanca being one of my absolute favorites from this toy line. Superb. But that's my opinion. What's your opinion? Was this one of the best toy lines of all time? 12-inch toy lines of all time? Was it one of the worst? People have various opinions on this topic, especially with this toy line, with the Street Fighter 2 toy line. Some people like it, some people don't. Look what you got, though. These figures were made on the Hall of Fame body. Beautiful head sculpts. So they were practically indestructible, but what they lacked in articulation, they definitely made up in colorful clothing. Tons and tons of fantastic, interchangeable, workable, functioning weapons. The spring-loaded action weapon, guaranteed to drive parents crazy. But they all came with one, and everybody had a. This one, he didn't have a stand. Some of these guys came with stands. I believe yes, he came with a stand. Guile came with a stand. This line didn't last very long. And maybe that tells you that it was not as popular as people thought it would be, or it could not make the transition to action figure from video game to movie to action figure. Maybe it couldn't make that jump. But it's, to this very day, a cult classic amongst a ton of collectors in the collecting community, especially the Street Fighter collecting community. But guys, I go further than that. I truly feel that this is one of the best toy lines, my opinion, but it's one of the best toy lines that was ever produced on the 12-inch scale. But we want your thoughts. We want your opinions on this. Do you remember this toy line? Fond memories, bad memories, or was this a toy line you just rather soon forget? But to call this toy line one of the worst toy lines that Hasbro ever produced, to me, is blasphemous. These toys offered, here's the spring-loaded weapons again with the projectile. These toys offered so much playability. Now, did they hold their collectability? Not so much. There's a few out there that might be worth something, but for the most part, you can pretty much go on eBay or Amazon and still find these guys for a really decent price. But price is not what we're talking about, guys. We're talking about legacy. The Street Fighter legacy. That's the question, guys. There were two versions of Ryu, two variants. There was a version, this version here, he doesn't have any shoes on. If I can tilt him forward, I'll show you. See, he doesn't have any shoes on. And one version has him with boots on. The boot version is a little bit more expensive, a little bit more difficult to find. And this is what we're talking about, the variants. More of a chase figure for Ryu. One of the best action figure, 12-inch action figure toy lines ever produced. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. You need only to take yourself back. I don't know how old anybody was in 1993. I was an adult in 1993. I believe I was 23 years old when this toy line came out. So I was already collecting at that point. But kids were crazy about this toy line because of the connection to the video game. I need someone to convince me differently that there's a better 12-inch action line, toy line that had this type of impact, that had this type of fanfare on the big screen, on the toy shelves, and in the arcade, where this toy line and these characters originated from. You'll be hard pressed to find a 12-inch action figure, including G.I. Joe, as much as I love G.I. Joe, that had that much fanfare going for it. The Street Fighter debate. The best, the worst. We want to hear your thoughts and your opinions on this toy line. I challenge you, I dare you to find a 12-inch action figure toy line that had so many things going for it, so many positives, from movies to video games to toys. There were 3 3/4-inch figures of these characters sold as well. I'm going to throw that in there as well to help my debate. You know the routine, guys. God bless and keep collecting.